So thank you guys for joining us. The Book of Boba Fett is the second series for Star Wars live action on Disney Plus. Obviously, there's been some animation on there, but this is something that growing up I always wanted there to be some kind of live action show. And we had the Ewok stuff early on. We're going to talk about that some other time, not tonight. But the stuff that they've started with Disney Plus, obviously The Mandalorian was fantastic, but what we want to talk about tonight is Boba Fett. And the first thing I have to ask each of you is, starting with Nick, is like, what does this character mean to you? Is this a big deal?
Um, it's a big deal for sure, but to me, Boba Fett never really resonated with me the way it did with a lot of other fans. I was never obsessed with Boba Fett. I was more obsessed with like the bounty hunters on Vader's ship on the deck, of the ship, than any individual one. I was more intrigued by them as a group. So, growing up, I never got the obsession with Boba Fett. Honestly, like, and this, people who know me will cringe here, but seeing part of the backstory in the prequels of Jango and Boba actually increased my appreciation for the character, because he really didn't have that much to do in the original trilogy, and he was kind of kind of a doofus. I mean, he messed up. He wasn't as, like, menacing as people, like, kind of wanted him to be or thought he was. And so I want to see that. Whether we got to see that in this series or not, I don't know. I guess that's what we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah, that's funny that you would say that. That you would say he's kind of like a bumbling idiot sort of a thing, because, yeah, I mean, things didn't work out quite the way he planned. I was looking this up. Obviously, it's very kind of known that he didn't have many lines in Empire. There were he had 4 lines, 5 sentences total, and really didn't say anything in Jedi. And I think that Wilhelm scream, some people think, is like his 5th line. So before all of the redos and the special editions and everything, he really was, I mean, like, he only had like 6 minutes of screen time, so it was not something that he was like front and center. But yeah, he did seem to screw up a little bit. Desi, what about you? I know that you were at least a fan of The Mandalorian, but like, did you come in being a Boba Fett fan from Star Wars?
Look, he's just a simple man trying to make his way in the galaxy. Um, I I love Star Wars in general, but I'm kind of in the same camp as Nick. Maybe it's because all of the movies had already come out by the time I was born, all of the original trilogy. So I just watched them all on VHS growing up, and never really thought that much about Boba Fett. Didn't think he was that menacing, probably because I already basically knew how it ended, and he just gets knocked into a sarlacc pit by somebody who's blind and just accidentally knocks into him. Um, so yeah, I was when the prequels came out. I think I was in college when Attack of the Clones came out, and we got more of Boba and Jango's backstory. So yeah, that's what brought the character up to the next level for me, was getting more of that backstory.
Gotcha. Okay, Ron.
Yeah, I mean, I like the character. He wasn't always one of my favorites, particularly in the trilogy, just because, yeah, he has an Empire. He's this just awesome, menacing character you don't know much about. And then they just unceremoniously just kind of dump him in the beginning of Jedi, so much that, at one point, Lucas wanted to have him fly back out of the Sarlacc just to show that he didn't die in it, like at the end of the battle. Like, that was supposedly one of the things that was planned but got cut. But I liked him a lot in the expanded stuff. Like, he came back in Dark Empire, hunting down, I think it was Han on Narshada and Nalhada, and the Tales of the Bounty Hunters. Like, some of the backup literature really fleshed out the character, and particularly, like, the lore around the Mandalorians, which we found more out about in the Mandalorian and in Clone Wars and Rebels than we ever did really in this, because he's, being a clone, he's not really as tied to the culture.
Okay. First of all, you people are all nuts. Boba Fett was awesome And maybe it's just because as a little kid, I saw The Empire Strikes Back 21 and a half times in the theater.
Or was it because you saw the holiday special
No,
and you're like,
no.
this guy?
Literally, I don't remember the holiday special until later on. So, like, I had no idea about that one. It was really about he looked cool. He didn't say much. I really thought he was, like, the armor was amazing. I mean, I kind of, like, fell in love with this character. And so I always wanted there to be more. So there was actually a Kenner action figure mail away. And I don't know if you guys know about this at all, but what you had to do is you actually had to cut the back UPC code off of your action figures, which I would not do for money these days. But back in the day, you cut them off, you send them away, and you get this Boba Fett figure. And the Boba Fett figure was something along the lines of this. Now the rocket didn't disconnect because when they first sent it out, it did disconnect, and then there was a choking hazard, and they were like, oh, "Okay, we're not going to do that." So I got it in a little box. It was like the biggest deal when I had this because there wasn't a lot of Boba Fett stuff. Now basically it's Darth Vader and Boba Fett and Kylo Ren everywhere you go, so he's represented everywhere. But at the time, you didn't have a lot of Boba Fett stuff. So I thought this was a great character. Maybe it's just because he wasn't around much. But then as we moved into like the prequels and like Darth Maul was there for a hot minute and he's like this cool menacing character and they kill him in 8 seconds. And, it's just like you're going, George Lucas, why do you keep killing these characters that you're making that seem so cool? But now Nick has me questioning that about the whole bumbling thing. But I really felt like he was a cool character along the way. So I think when The Mandalorian came around, it was kind of like this homage at the time. It was like, let's not do Boba Fett, but let's do The Mandalorian. And, that show obviously took off. And then, season 2, they bring in Boba Fett. Why do you guys think, Ron, let me ask you this one first. Why do you guys think they decided to do Mandalorian season 1, Mandalorian season 2, and then Book of Boba Fett? Because Book of Boba Fett really, by the end, feels like Mandalorian season 3. So why do you think they decided to do it this way?
I don't know. It does kind of feel like they just couldn't get all the actors in place, or they had started planning a Boba Fett series, and Mandalorian became so much more popular, they rewrote it around that. I've been thinking about that for the last few weeks since we basically got, I think it was episode 5 where Boba doesn't really appear. Like it's just feels like it's a side story for the Mandalorian, and they're just maybe just doing it as fan service to just have the character there and maybe shut up some fans about asking for it.
People like me, I get it. Okay, but the other thing is, when they make this series, I always wonder how far in advance they're working ahead. So for things like Marvel, like it seems like some things are planted way in advance, and then some things they just kind of shoehorn in, like the whole deal with like Mysterio and the Spider-Man Far From Home, and them like kind of cutting to Jake Gyllenhaal as if he was at Tony Stark's speech. That's shoehorned in. But like things like, that they come back to in time, I wonder if somebody went, hey, remember that thing we did? Let's rewrite that in. When Fennec is in Mandalorian and she's laying there, like, basically we think she's dead, and then here comes Boba Fett. And we don't know it's Boba Fett at the time. Nick, do you think that they planned this far ahead? Like they knew at that point there was going to be Book of Boba Fett. They said, Ming-Na, we're going to have you a little bit here, and then you're going to have your own series. Like do you think they went, this is working, let's just run with it?
I think at the time they knew that was going to be Boba Fett. But my problem with Disney's handling of Star Wars, although I end up loving all the individual pieces of content they put out. I mean, I like all 3 sequel movies, but are there huge flaws and missed opportunities because they didn't think and plan ahead? Yes, this has been a problem with the way Disney handles Star Wars. And so I think I don't know how much credit to give them. I like the approach of these are little books within the Star Wars story. I think we see traces of that when they called all the Mandalorian episodes chapters. And so I think they always had that idea in their head that this was going to be a series of books. I wish they explained that to the fans, because I feel like Boba Fett, the Book of Boba Fett, is a nice little novella, like a short little story, and it has a few chapters in it, and it makes sense that you explore other characters in a book, in chapters of a book. That's not unusual. So I have no problem with what they did here. I don't know if I would have appreciated them coming out and telling us what they were doing. So that's why I have no idea if it was planned or not. I really, and I really don't know. But as far as that specific moment, yes. I don't know if they planned on Book of Boba Fett being a little kind of novella with a few chapters, or if they just were like, we're going to bring Boba Fett in eventually. We don't know how yet, but we're going to throw him in here and toss it out.
All right, I want to ask you a question and speak back to, and I know we haven't really talked much about Boba Fett, the series, yet, but this is kind of important to me because as a Star Wars fan, when Disney bought Star Wars, I was excited. I thought, this is great. They're going to do such good things with this IP. And then I feel like they had this whole series of things ready to go, and people burned out on it very quickly. I don't know whether it was because movies like Rogue One and Solo didn't do what they wanted them to do, or whether it was that the last three sequels were not what they expected them to be. But why do you think people in general like seemingly got burned out on Star Wars, whereas Marvel, they can throw like 16 movies at me in a year and I'm still not tired of it?
Well, I think it's because it's very obvious that they didn't plan out a long-term story and a long-term plan. They were just throwing out these little things here and there. I think The Last Jedi damaged things. I really do. I think that put a sour taste in a lot of people's mouth. I think that ruined a lot of things moving forward. I think that affected people's thoughts about Solo, because Solo came out so quickly after Last Jedi, and so I think it just tumbled from there. When we got Last Jedi, every time I watched it, I felt something different about it. Like, I liked it, hated it, loved it, despised it. It was so weird. I still have a love-hate relationship with that movie. I like the movie as its own thing, but I hate it in the fact that it threw the sequel trilogy off track, and you can't really forgive Disney for that. They had all three actors of the original trilogy. Yeah. They should have taken advantage of that. No matter what they wanted to do down the line, they should have taken advantage of what they already had and just given us more of that, and then gone off and done whatever the heck they wanted. But they just didn't plan it out. JJ threw a bunch of stuff out there. Rian Johnson decided, I'm going to play in the sandbox and move things around. Here you go. I don't. It was dumb. It was mismanagement.
Yeah, I think the second movie went in such a weird direction that in the third movie they felt like they had to course correct, and it sort of overcorrected, I'm feeling. But yeah. Desi, you said those are... So go ahead, Nick.
Well, I just want bringing that all back to Boba Fett. I like that. That's what makes me distrust whether they know what they're doing going forward, whether they actually have a plan. I think that's so they planted that seed of distrust with the sequel trilogy, and now we're left to deal with it here. And so when we see a show like this, I'm okay at the final product, but yeah, you get you a little nervous. Okay, so we're ditching Boba Fett and moving to Mandalorian, which I'm fine with. Give me those episodes. Give me Luke Skywalker. Give me Ahsoka. Give me Baby Yoda. But it makes us wonder what they have planned. But then again, and I'm sorry, we could go into this too. I don't mean to.
No, it's good.
Space here, but. It's Filoni and Favreau have given us no reason to distrust what they're doing, in my mind anyway. People might, here on this panel disagree with that, but I'm giving them my trust.
Do you think that Favreau, I feel like that team has kind of become the Feige of like this universe, right? They're kind of putting it together and doing in the Disney Plus series what we didn't see successfully happen in the theater movies is kind of what you're saying.
Well, they need that Feige. I mean, basically, the problem with the trilogy, the sequel trilogy, was it was a film by committee. They're like, okay, let's just get everybody invigorated and let's do the exact same thing over again for The Force Awakens. And then they decided to go to Rian Johnson and say, let's try and take it somewhere different. And it split the fandom so much that they decided to play it so safe and like revert everything back. And they do need, if they had written all those at one time, I think that it would have been a coherent story. And the way we got it, it wasn't a coherent story. And I think Filoni has more of that, being a showrunner, having that further outlook of where he wants to take a show, as opposed to J.J. Abrams, who, yes, he's run shows, but I don't think he was in the writer's room for Lost every week. And to me, J.J. Abrams and Filoni are the two different kids on the playground playing with the Star Wars figures. J.J. Abrams is the one who's reenacting the movies with his figures, and Filoni's the one making up his own stories with the figures. And you always had those kids on the playground when they wanted to play these games. You know, are we just going to reenact the movie, or are we going to do something different? And I think that's the difference here.
I will tell you that more than one occasion as a kid, I said, will you like to come over and play Star Wars? And it was taking the figures and doing the worst things to them that now I look back and go, what? What the heck was I thinking? It reminds me of that Saturday Night Live sketch where it's like they're talking about the Star Wars figures, and Bobby Moynihan goes, I get 3. One to open, one to keep in the package, and one just in case. And the little kid goes, in case what? But that's like totally me. You were going to say something about fighting words and Jedi over there, Desi?
Oh, yeah, I know. Unpopular opinion, but The Last Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie. And because JJ, I feel like, played it way too safe with Force Awakens being a rewrite of A New Hope, and played it way too safe. So much fan service. It was like he went through Twitter and said, what does everybody want? Let me check these things off the list. Some people want her to be a Palpatine. Some people want them to kiss. Some people want Ben to die. Like, he just went through the checkbox on Twitter and made sure that he checked everything off, even though it didn't fit together. However,
here's the thing. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think that they knew they wanted to do something with Boba Fett. I don't think they had this whole plan with the Tusken Raiders in Mandalorian season. I think it was season 1 when Fennec was there, correct? Because he showed up, he had the sound of the spurs, and it looked like he had his cape. Versus if all of his armor was taken away, then he shouldn't have the sound of spurs when he goes to pick her up.
I think you guys need to have a conversation.
I was just going to say, The Last Jedi, yes, I really think it's a fantastic movie. My problem is it fitting in with that 3-movie arc. But that's the difference between what we're seeing now and what we saw with the sequel trilogy. I think they're giving all these different directors a chance to direct these episodes, but we see a cohesive story, even when we break away to the Mandalorian and Luke and Ahsoka and Grogu and all that fun stuff. It still feels the same. Like, it still feels, they're not trying to, they're not trying to throw things off the track or throw things in there or change things up. It all feels like one thing. Like, just like, like I said, just like when you're reading a book and different chapters go off in different directions with different characters, it still all feels the same. The story is told the same. You're not disoriented. Where Last Jedi, you can show that 20 years from now to people, and they can be so disoriented because it looks nothing like the film that came before it or after it.
Yeah. So let's talk about the series, since that's what we came to do. But I do think it's all connected. I feel like all of it is connected here. So
it's like poetry. It rhymes.
It sure. But with this series, the one thing that I feel like, and I want to go around and get some feelings again, is that I don't think it started off exciting for me. And so I actually didn't love the beginning. And as a matter of fact, I was watching it with my family, and they were like confused because they didn't know, like, okay, when I see, the water splashing around, like, where the clones were made, I'm like, okay, this is where that is. And when I see him coming out of the, trying to work his way out of the pit, they're like, I'm lost. Because speaking of Lost, it was kind of like Lost. It was, we're here, but we're going back. And then we're here again, and then we're going back. And they were just like, threw up their hands, they're like, I don't know what's happening. Now, I enjoyed it, but didn't love it early on. So, Ron, let me go to you first. Like, were you instantly hooked, or did you have to warm up to this series?
No, it was definitely a little slow. The first episode I thought was fine, and the flashbacks made sense. And if you're gonna, I think part of the problem with the flashbacks is you kind of end up stopping with them because that's just the way the narrative went. If you're gonna do that structure for this, if that's gonna be the structure for your series, you should probably continue it through the run of the series, not just the first 3 episodes. But my other problem with it is, we were looking at, this isn't the Boba Fett we knew, and I think that's going to come up a lot. Like, at first, like, this isn't the, Hunter. This is somebody seems so different than the, even the little bit we knew about him, who he was, because they don't explain that he was with the Tusken for 5 years. For all we know, those first 3 episodes were just 6 months until you see him find Fennec, and then you realize how long it's been. And I think that could have been made a lot clearer early on, and it would have cleared up a whole lot for what was going on. Just the fact that they took so long to say it was 5 years with the Tuskens.
Sorry, Nick.
I really did like it. I think, I guess, love would be strong. That I love it right away. I don't think so. It was intriguing. I was really, again, I am going to hand Filoni and Favreau a bit of trust that I don't know if this came out of nowhere. If this was before Mandalorian, I think I would have a different opinion of it. But I let it sit, and I was interested to see where that story went, because I knew they'd take me in a good place, and I think ultimately they did. But yeah, it was crazy slow, and it was, but I liked it. I definitely liked it. I was, definitely all in.
Yeah, it was, again, it was a little rough for me getting started into it because and maybe a lot of times this is true, and maybe you guys know this feeling, is it's sometimes it's about who you're watching it with. Whether you're watching by yourself or your best friend who's a Star Wars geek, or you're watching it with somebody who's a novice. I think that sometimes that dictates how you actually feel about something the first time you see it, and that, maybe that's what I had going on. But Desi, what were your...
No doubt there was a difference, though, between
okay.
between that and Mandalorian, right? Like, I'm guessing maybe we all feel, I don't know if we all feel that same way, but like Mandalorian, I mean, that just got you in there really quickly. This was a story you just had to sit back and kind of take in.
Dude, don't be sorry about geeking out over Star Wars. That's why we're here, man. Just whatever you want to say it, dude. No, it's all good. Just
came up and I pushed her away.
It's a rinky-dink little little YouTube show. So just whatever you want to say, dude. We're just friends here having a good time. So, Desi?
I feel like I loved the beginning episodes. I thought they were great. I didn't mind it. I know that some people thought, oh, they should have just done it in chronological order, where they, instead of doing the flashback thing, they should have had just the Tuskens and then get to where he was at the end of The Mandalorian. But I think that would have made it too slow of a beginning. That would have been like, it wouldn't make any sense because everybody had just seen him sit on Jabba's throne. Like, what are we doing? Why are we with these Tuskens? But on the other hand, if you didn't have any kind of flashback, we would have had people complaining, oh, we wanted to see how he got out of the Sarlacc pit. So they had to do that. I thought the Tusken storyline was great. And the beginning episodes, when I got to see DJ Rex as a sabacc dealer, how freaking cool was that? The one thing I would say is they kept showing flashbacks of him as a kid on Camino, but never paid that off.
Yes.
And
agreed.
And they used. I thought it was interesting the way they did that because like the shot with the slave one where he's leaning, young Boba's leaning against the glass.
So
Like they
excited.
went to so much trouble to do that scene. They had a stand-in kid come and do it. They had they did the CGI on the glass so that it looked like the original actor, and they went to a lot of trouble to show that scene. But for me again, it's the geeking out of the scene, the slave one in action too. So
Oh,
I think the payoff was there. But yeah, you're right. They probably didn't get into it enough. But that's also that jumping around thing. If they were just jumping back to him and how he got out of the Sarlacc pit and where he had gone, so they were going from what's current and then letting you catch up, that may have been different. But because they bounced around there, into the arena where like Django lost his head and all that stuff, it did seem a little bit crazy. Something else you want to say about that, Nick?
well, I was just so excited. I not ashamed to admit it. I am a prequel lover, and if you want to take me back into that universe and develop more of that, like what Boba was feeling as a kid. I mean, I even got so excited. I thought maybe they were gonna, do a little bit of even post, Daddy getting head chopped off flashbacks, with Boba as a kid, because I think that is very that we explored that a little bit in Clone Wars, and I would have loved to see some of that come to life, and maybe we still can. Look, hopefully we'll have future books of Boba to go through, and we could explore some of that time, and maybe they're saving that. I mean, everybody wants to see that initial, showdown with Cad Bane where he gets the net in his helmet. That was a deleted scene or never used scene or whatever in Clone Wars. So there's a lot to explore, and I totally got excited for that. And then there was no payoff to showing us that.
Go ahead,
One
Ron.
of the one of the things I think about the way the slow burn of the first few episodes was very 70s, storytelling to me, which is very, what these guys who are putting the show together try and emulate. They grew up watching, those 70s things. And to me, I got a big Godfather 2 feeling out of this whole thing. Finding out how he becomes the Don or the Daimo of Tatooine, and with the flashbacks to, what we see in Godfather 2 of Vito back in Sicily and all that. I really got a Godfather vibe out of the whole first couple episodes.
Here's what I find funny. Most of the time in Deep in the Plus, a lot of people are in chat talking about Star Wars, and tonight we're in the show talking about Star Wars, now talking about Godfather. So
It's usually my fault.
yeah, there you have it.
I bring everything back to Star Wars.
I want to thank Stephen Crawford for the super chat. Thank you so much. I want more mod backstory. How did these crazy kids come up with those cool speeders? Nick also would like to see their choice of their mods. We could call it Mods, the Angst of Tatooine Youth. Again, thank you for the super chat. We're not going to talk about mods yet. We'll talk about mods in a minute. But I do want to go back
right
to...
after we talk about Bruno.
We're not talking about Bruno, Desi. No, we don't talk about Bruno. So when we go back into this world, I do need to see, as a fan, how he got out of the pit. Because that's the thing, there was that fan trailer a few years ago about him getting out of the pit, and that, maybe there was going to be a Boba Fett movie, or maybe that was going to be one of the Star Wars stories they were going to do. So I do need to see how he got out of the pit and see how he got to the point where we saw him in The Mandalorian. But when I saw him in The Mandalorian, and I finally knew that was Boba Fett, I didn't know the whole time when he went up to Finnick, or when he was had the hood on, was in the bar.
You didn't figure it out when you heard the spurs? I knew immediately that was Boba Fett.
So anyway, but when it happened, I was geeking out about it. I loved that, and it's great, tell me that history. And then at the very end of Mandalorian 2, season 2, when it's he's sitting there in the throne, and Finnick shows up, and it goes boom, Book of Boba Fett. I'm like, yes, bring me this. And so when I saw the first episode, I didn't love it. And but again, it was a necessary evil type of a thing. But by the time I got to the end of this series, I thought it was fantastic. And one of the things that I think this does that people complain that but 2 doesn't do is it's fan service to the original. So many aliens, vehicles, just characters, animals,
Well,
like the whole bit from the original, because it's on Tatooine, obviously. But I mean, it's such a throwback to that. What were you gonna say?
I love all of the callbacks, not just to the original trilogy and Tatooine, but also like callbacks to the prequels. I mean, obviously because it's Boba Fett and he and Jango were in the prequels. Callbacks to some of the cartoons, you know, callbacks to even Jedi Fallen Order. You see a droid in Pelly's, you know, her spaceport area that's from Jedi Fallen Order. I loved how, like, I don't think they created any new droids for this. I think everything was from something else.
I love that when we were talking about Rex earlier, you attribute that to DJ Rex and not Rex from actual Star Tours. Like, but you're right. I mean, they used that model 3 different times, at least that I saw. Once when it was in, you know, the dealer, and then once when he was boarding the ship and had to give up his weapons, and once when he was coming off the ship, it was a different one. So I mean, it was really cool to see that. Nick was grinning a lot when you were talking about Jedi Fallen Order, though.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, to see that little droid, I forget what its call letters are or whatever. But yeah, you know, forget the droids though. Max Rebo.
Yes.
Is that the next, like, Admiral Akbar? Did they just give Max Rebo an
They
unceremonious
didn't.
death?
No. He took the day off of work. He was not in that episode. He did not get blown up that day. I know. I was so happy. I had to go back and make sure he was safe.
He took the day off of work. Yeah.
I mean, if everybody survived the barge blowing up, like, obviously, like, Bib Fortuna and those guys were all on the barge, which we saw completely explode. You know, they could, you know, survive that somehow, too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Well, yeah, you're right. Max Rebo, that was pretty awesome to see. How come
That's what I geeked out.
How come Gaia wasn't in this? No, I'm just kidding. It's no, we don't talk about Bruno. We're not going to talk about Gaia, at least not until the Star Cruiser sets sail. But, like, you know, seeing the moisture farm, seeing the Tusken Raiders, seeing like the Jawas, all of these, it was you know, I hate to overuse this expression, but it was like a love letter to Star Wars fans all the way through, that just got more and more, like, you know, huge, whether it was, you know, us seeing Luke and Grogu, or it was, you know, Luke's putting Grogu on his back with the backpack and running in the same kind of way that he did. Oh my gosh. Again, Nick, you're like, yeah, that.
I like, that was the best Star Wars anything I've ever seen. No, I don't know. I'm a little recency bias there, but I mean, like, that entire episode, I was jumping off the couch. I was screaming. I was clapping. I was yelling. To see Luke jump around, to see Baby Yoda, the frogs. I loved how Luke teased him with the frogs.
Gosh, yes.
Everything about that was so fun, and you know, to explore Luke's you know, character and how, you know, it's really interesting. Like, I feel for the guy, and I hope we get to see more of that to kind of fill in that backstory of what we eventually saw in the last Jedi. You know, I want to see. This is a great way of really giving the fans, filling in that story, and we could do that now, and I love it wholeheartedly. I am all in. You know, get out of here if he's a little bit off, or I don't care. You know what? They're giving me Luke Skywalker, and they're being true to the character. They're redeeming everything I've ever wanted to see about Luke. You know, I love it. I love it. Give me more. Him and Baby Yoda playing together was the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life.
I think, though, you were talking about, like, get out of here if you don't think it looks real or not. I think they did an amazing job with it, especially that it's in daylight, and I think even a
Yeah.
better job than what we saw with Grand Moff Tarkin
Absolutely.
in Rogue One, and also especially with Princess Leia. I think they did an amazing. Like it's come so far to the point where it's a little
And
bit
his
creepy.
voice
Yeah.
is like not real. That was all I don't know, like auto tune, or I don't know what you would call it when it's like computer generated voice. I mean, that sounded so spot on. It was amazing.
I saw an interview with Mark Hamill where he said that they had shown him the de-aging process that they used for the Marvel movies, and obviously there's a lot of that. There's the Tony Stark when he has his flashback, or Hank Pym when he goes in early in Ant-Man. There's a lot of that, and the fact they call it the de-aging process, it's just CGI, but it's really neat that that's like kind of a thing. They go, you know what? You want young Mark Hamill? We can do young Mark Hamill. But one of the other things he said in the interview was that they had asked him, Jon Favreau had asked him down to the Mandalorian set, and he kind of figured that they were going to ask him to like, play like a background character or something. And then they're like, hey, here's what we want you to do. And he was like, just talking about what a service this was to the fans.
Can I say my wish list? If they could do a special edition of the original trilogy where it's like they bring in that deleted scene of Jabba the Hutt, can we get some Carrie Fisher, like better, instead of her being backlit and you don't see her face and they get all weird with it when she's like reaching out to Ben through the Force. I would love to see actual Carrie Fisher's face doing that.
Maybe. I'll make some calls. Let's talk about this for a second, and I'm going to start with Ron on this one. What was your opinion when you saw this? The whole thing with the twins. Like, how'd you feel about this storyline?
I think it had to touch on, like, we know the Hutts is the crime family, so why are they not stepping in? I think it was a good just get them in and get them out kind of thing. I mean, I would love to see a bounty hunter series take place on Nar Shaddaa around all the Hutts, but it's a good way to get these characters in that, they're not very cinematic because they can't really move or do anything. So just get them in and get them out, and at least it wasn't that horrible, and I can't even remember what her name is or his name is from the Clone Wars series. Zito, just almost like I watched the Clone Wars original movie and then I just didn't watch the show because of that, and then finally someone said, no, you got to go back and watch it. But just that movie was just so bad, and that was one of the worst parts. These weren't so bad. The tattoos or whatever, but just get the Hutts in, explain why they're not part of the story, and get them out.
I felt bad for that mouse he was using, like a
like a powder puff. Yeah.
I was watching that part a bit earlier today again, and I think it bites his hand.
So, Nick, was there a connection? Because I feel like he had like a tattoo or something to Crimson Dawn. Is that what they're trying to do there? Or...
I don't think they went there. They never explicitly went there, right? Like, yeah. Which is interesting because, I mean, who knows? Sometimes I forget like where these timelines actually are. So, I mean, technically, like Crimson Dawn, they could bring them in. They could bring someone like Kara in, or even I think Maul. I think he would still.
I was hoping
possibly.
For Kara.
I think the end of Rebels took place after Solo. Well, yeah, I had to have, because end of Rebels is right before like Rogue One.
Yeah, you're right.
Time period. So Maul was dead again.
But
for real this time.
So there's a great comic series going on right now. It's the Bounty Hunters series of comics, and in that, Kara is there. So that is with Han Solo frozen in carbonite. She kind of gets a hold of him and puts him up for auction, and so she's around with Crimson Dawn and all that at that point, and so that's not far removed from where we are here. So it's reasonable to believe she's still around. I'm cool with her kind of coming back and Crimson Dawn being involved. It's a lot to explain, though. I feel you'd have to really set that up. In that Bounty Hunter series, they're also doing a lot with the Hutts. I'm all for the Hutts. More Hutts, the better. Bring them on. I want the Book of Hutts. I mean, give me a whole series with Hutts. I think that'd be freaking-tastic. But the problem here. So, all right, kind of skirting around a few things. I feel like one of my biggest issues with the Book of Boba Fett is not enough character development. And so I feel like this was a nice little story, but I kind of was left wanting to know more about motivations, a little better fleshed out storylines. I even thought Boba Fett was all over the place a little bit with, like, why does he care? What's he doing? Why does he care about this town? All that stuff. And so, and so if you bring in Crimson Dawn, forget about it. You're going to have to really flesh that out and explain that. And they weren't interested in doing that. They were interested in giving us a short little story that didn't have much depth to it, and kind of using Book of Boba Fett to tell us a little bit about what Mando and Grogu were up to, what Luke was up to, what Ahsoka was up to. And we're going to move on, and we're going to have season 3 of Mando. We're going to have an Ahsoka series, and we're going to move on and maybe revisit Boba again down the road. But that's about it. So I'd love more characters. I'd love more intrigue. I'd love that. But they didn't. The writing wasn't there. I mean, they had not much depth to it.
Okay, so I need to interrupt again because Stephen Crawford's throwing some money around tonight, just making it rain with super chats. Another super chat. This one's to Ron. Ron, your costume looks like a cross between a priest and a stormtrooper.
Yeah.
Getting some got to go to confession vibes. Also would like a show called Jedi Law and Order. Dum, dum, dum,
I'm in.
And two things that I just noticed in chat. One was Sean L2D2 says, I hate that Luke made Grogu choose. He lost respect in my eyes.
Well, I mean, it's laying the groundwork for why Luke's
He's a bad
Jedi,
teacher.
He's a bad teacher, yeah. And
wow.
also, only a Sith deals in absolutes, so making him pick between one or the other, that's a Sith move.
Says the Ben Solo chaser, whatever. And then Dennis Morris says, I like big huts.
While we're talking about twins, the Hutt twins, let's talk about Boba's sister. I was kind of hoping for
Omega?
an Omega. Yeah, I was kind of hoping for an Omega
Cameo?
cameo, but I'm thinking maybe if they have another Book of Boba Fett, she will show up because she can also ride a Rancor. Every time I was watching it, I kept calling his Rancor Muchi, even though I know that's Omega's Rancor's name, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wish I knew what Boba's Rancor's name was. Also, did you know that Boba's clone name was Alpha? So now Boba and his sister are Alpha and Omega. Fun fact.
Very fun fact. You know what? The Omega thing actually entered my mind as well after watching Bad Batch. It seemed like it was like, hey, we're all in the same universe. It should kind of cross over. And they did do a lot of throwbacks to the Clone Wars in general, so that was cool. Again, Stephen Crawford, another super chat. Thank you, $1.99. We need Tony's Hutt's House of Pie. Okay. So while we're jumping all around, let me talk about. And again, we're not going to talk about Bruno, but let's talk about this fellow right here, Cad Bane. That was a big deal in Clone Wars, big deal in Bad Batch, was in the comics, and now is here, voiced by Corey Burton, everywhere except for the comics, because there's no voice. But he's voiced in live action here, and and again, I'm going to go to you on this one, Nick. Do you think they did a great job? I think they did a great job. So bringing him to life. You're like, yes. You're like, I don't even know what the question is, but yes.
When I saw that silhouette down the street, coming towards the camera. I mean, I knew that was Cad Bane, and I like I said, I don't want to do one of those reaction videos, but it probably would have been pretty fun because I was like literally off the couch. That's Cad Bane, Cad Bane, Cad Bane. And he came closer and closer, and it was Cad Bane, and I really did. I mean, I'm not nitpicky about my CGI. I'm not digging in there. Look, I like the prequels. I'm not nitpicky about my CGI. I'm not picking things apart and trying to. Look, I thought it was done really well, and there's people out there. Oh, this wasn't right. Or look, come on, shut up. It's beautiful. They just brought this.
Nobody in real life is gonna look like their cartoon character.
Yeah.
Come on.
But let's no. It's we got to go back.
So
just one more time. I mean, come on.
He looks amazing.
So good. Yeah. So
and he fit in perfectly there. I mean, the duels, the shootouts. I mean, like it was just, oh my goodness. And he so fit into this universe, and it wasn't forced. You didn't need to know anything about this guy other than he was a menacing dude. And if you knew his backstory from Clone Wars, great. You loved it even more. But there was nothing forced about it, and it was a perfect use of the character. God, Dave Filoni is just geeking out. I mean, like Ron said, I mean, these are grown men with action figures just playing around in this toy box, and that's all that's happening here. It's beautiful.
Yeah, Ron, thoughts?
I liked Bane in this. I think he looked fine. I hated the character in the Clone Wars because to me, all he did was just show how bad the Jedi were at using their powers. That they couldn't get rid of him. That he kept. Like, oh, he's flying away with, like, jets on his feet. Okay, I can't use the Force to just crush the jets? Like, we don't have to, like, that's what every time he showed up in the Clone Wars, it's like, Obi-Wan should have just, like, okay, you're done.
But, I mean, that's his whole thing, is that everything he does is, like, to be to protect him from the Force. That's everything in his character is to be able to beat the Jedi and the Sith.
Right, but it would narratively never made sense for me when he was fighting. But here, when he's fighting the other bounty hunters, it was a much better use of the character.
In terms of like video game, he seemed very OP to me because he comes into town and just basically does whatever he wants, kills whatever he wants. I mean, he seemed overpowered. And it was super menacing. And matter of fact, I feel like again it goes back to the characters that like Darth Maul and Boba Fett that they killed too quickly. But Rosita said in chat, "So glad he's dead." But Desi, is he dead?
No. As Luke Skywalker says, no one's ever really gone. And you just said they killed off Darth Maul and Boba Fett too soon. Guess what? Neither one of them actually died.
Right.
And what I loved the fact that they took a deleted scene from the Clone Wars and basically made it canon. And they also took a deleted scene from A New Hope and made that canon when you see Fixer and Cammy in Tosche Station. I mean, how great was that to go to Tosche Station finally?
Well, and they went to Baker's Canyon, and we got to see Womp Rats in Baker's Canyon, and all that kind of stuff. But that's why I said it was, again, to overuse it, a love letter because of all the things that they go back to, whether it's the Moisture Farm or things like this. They're going back to Clone Wars and the animated series 4. But a lot of fan theory is that he's not dead. But one thing that I think that the Book of Boba Fett showed us is that no one's ever dead if you've got a bacta tank. Because you just throw them in there, right? I mean, isn't that how that goes?
Those are miracle workers right there.
Unless you're really sad.
It's funny because I actually, until we zoomed in and saw it was Cobb Vanth, I thought it was going to be Cad Bane in that bacta tank. I thought Boba Fett was going to drag him back. So that was really interesting because that kind of the end credits scene. So I don't know. Is he dead? So there are signs. Apparently, I didn't go back and listen this intently, but have you guys seen like there you could hear like that breathing apparatus or something like still pumping and working, which I don't know. I mean, I don't know how that works. To me, that would probably still go until the battery runs out. I don't know if you need to be alive for that thing to be working, but whatever. They're leaving the door open. They always do. And I mean, they cut people in half and they leave the door open. So whatever.
Yeah.
So
the only thing that really kills somebody in Star Wars is if they're super sad. Because Anakin got all of his limbs cut off, was burned up. He was able to be modified and lived. Everything was totally fine. Padme's
heart broken.
Sorry.
Yeah, and she
Dead.
died. Might have had something to do with childbirth too. I don't know, but Rosita.
No, they said physically she's fine.
Right,
she
exactly.
Just lost the will to live.
Yeah, before we get into that, Nick, I'll go to you next. But Rosita, thank you for the $20 super chat. And she said, well, knowing what happened to Finnick, that she's kind of a mod, I think we need a Book of Finnick. So again,
yes,
Rosita,
please.
thank you. So nice. What were you going to say, Nick?
Great character. Well, I don't mind if Cad Bane is dead as long as we get, like, I want that payoff, like I said earlier. I want that earlier meetup between a younger Boba Fett and Cad Bane, like we were kind of promised and teased in the Clone Wars. So I want to see that come to life in live action. So I have faith that will, as long as things go correctly and still like people love this and there's momentum behind it, we're going to see another Book of Boba Fett, I really believe. And so I'd like to see some of that explored with Cad Bane.
A lot of people say that Toto 360 is going to swoop in, bring him, put him in a back to tank, and everything's going to be fine.
That's his name, yeah.
Yeah. So going back to the mods for a second here, and I don't mean the ones in the chat. I mean these things. These guys who have these. Oh my gosh, have these modifications. I just Nick's head's about to come off of his neck, nodding his head about this one. What?
I forgive a lot in Star Wars. Like, really. I mean, there's not much that I don't like, and people get on me all the time about it. But, man, I like the idea of these mods. Look, androids in Star Wars, it's no big deal. I mean, everybody is practically everyone has mechanical parts that we know and love in Star Wars.
Human.
Like, I get it. But these things felt more like Inspector Gadget and weird. Like the way they talked was weird. The slow speed scooter race through town, like that was some of the like. Again, I love the prequels. That was some of the worst like CGI and special effects or whatever you want to call it that I've ever seen in Star Wars in my life. Those things looked like they were moving 2 miles an hour through the streets. I don't get it.
They would have fit in like Naboo or Coruscant, where everything is bright and wonderful and colorful. They didn't fit in Tatooine. That was the issue. Sorry, I don't want to see mods a Star Wars story as the next movie.
Let me ask you this, because
I
usually
care, right? I didn't care about them, and that's part of what I said about the writing having no depth, right? There was no depth to the character development, and so you want to give them a backstory, make me care. You can do that if you tried. You didn't try. I don't care.
I was a lot of times I try to like just basically crush Desi with trivia from things. The only trivia question that I have for you, Desi.
I feel like I would be prepared now.
No, well, you probably will be. I just have one trivia question for you, and it was about what you just mentioned. What are the 4 colors of the mod bikes?
I feel like it's like red, blue, green, and yellow.
You nailed it. You nailed it. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah, there you go. You did it. Good job.
Yay, I won.
But I mean,
one time.
But you make a great point. It's like they don't fit into that world. They're just this bright, shiny, metallic, and it's like, where did they even come from? Because everything on this world, historically for the other movies, and is old and aged and fit together from other parts. And even Anakin's pod racer was just put together, just with odds and ends, and C-3PO was with odds and ends, and he wasn't like the shiny, Adonis that we know now until later. But he, everything is just like put together, and so it doesn't seem right that these would be things that they would be there. But speaking of putting together, Ron, have we ever seen them actually build a starship in a Star Wars movie before? Because watching this and them building Mando's ship, I felt like this was the first time I've seen that.
You really don't have anywhere I could think of, like, where you're putting stuff, like, you've got them rebuilding the Falcon constantly. Literally, that's all they do is just fix the Falcon. Yeah.
The pod racer would be the only thing, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, they just them showing them putting this together, and the Naboo fighter was a great thing. I first felt sad for Mando because I was like, I want him to have another Razor Crest. Like, that was his thing. I want him to have another one. I hated when it was blown up. It was like, why did you do that? That was such a cool ship.
I feel like this is temporary.
So much money on the HasLab Razor Crest. Did you buy that? $350 or whatever we spent on that? No. Okay, I'm the only one. Okay.
No, I'm still jealous that you got that Target Millennium Falcon that you were playing with at the studio that you had, because that's so much better than all the. I think I own 3 if you count the popcorn bucket, and that one is amazing. I wish I had that. And there was a Slave One Kenner reproduction toy that I almost bought too, and then I was like, I'm never gonna take it out of the box because that's not me anymore. And so I would have to get 2, and they were like $150 each, and I didn't do that. But anyway,
take it out of the box. Come on, I fly this thing around my house like a couple times a week.
Oh, you know what? The very first time I actually went through the parks with you was when we did that. It was not really the parks; it was that Skyliner crawl that we did. And we stopped at, I think it was Art of Animation, and they had the toys, and you bought the Star Wars like Skyliner toy. And you immediately took it out of the box, and I'm like, what do you do? And you're like, I just take it out of the box. You can play it. It's a toy. Why wouldn't you take it out of the box?
Yeah. I'm done keeping things in boxes. That was me for a while, but no.
Yeah. So anyway,
I'm getting too old for that. I want to play with my toys.
No, I'm getting too old to not play with my toys. I love that. Let's talk about this scene right here, because you've got a Wookiee and a Gamorrean guard. And again, we're going back. But like, there's something weird about the Gamorrean guard. And I guess the thing that was that I guess they're wearing their summer outfits. Is that what's bothering me about them? Because they look too like lean. I don't know if it's just they're not eating enough or what.
And the skin tones don't match.
Yeah. Probably. What was it? I'm probably going to mispronounce this, and this is not the place to do it, so I apologize. But there was a PlayStation 1 game called like Masters of Terrakai. Or was it Terrakasi? It was Kasi. I knew that was going to be the thing. So
it's just a bad game. So,
but dude, I love that game. There was a Gamorrean guard in it, and like his power was he would like just get bigger like this, and it's like. You could play character versus character, and then the announcer would go, Luke Skywalker versus Luke Skywalker. Ready? Fight. And and there would be a different color. You wouldn't like a different color outfit on each one of them. I love that game. But the Gamorrean guard thing was a little bothersome to me. I don't know if it bothered you guys either. Clearly it bothered Ron a little bit. Oh, yeah, R.I.P. that they got pushed off the ledge. Yeah, and they squealed, and yeah, the whole pig squeal and...
I hate to say it, but I would have rather seen the mods get pushed off the cliff and kept the Gamorrean guards. Sorry.
What about this Wookiee, Desi?
Chrysanthemum, yeah, he's amazing. I love him. I have a Chewbacca in a Life Day outfit plush. I really hope that next year I can get Chrysanthemum in a Life Day outfit, holding a silver orb. That would be my dream come true. He's awesome, and I feel bad for Chewbacca, but he might be my new favorite Wookiee.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's Chris. Pronounce it again.
Just say Santo.
Okay, but the fact that he's credited as like Black Santo or whatever, it reminds me of that thing in Falcon and the Winter Soldier where he's like, "Oh, you're Black Falcon." He goes, "It's just Falcon." Like, it's just Falcon.
That's
like, We
That's
don't.
his name in the comic, is Black Chrysanthemum.
I know, but I'm just saying it's weird. Maybe I don't know. It's fine. So when we're going through this thing, and it to me it built up the whole series because again, like I said, I wanted that backstory. We got that backstory, the flashing back and forth. Some of that might have been a Robert Rodriguez decision. The directors were like Robert Rodriguez, Dave Filoni. Bryce Dallas Howard came back to direct one of these, so it really felt like it was just a continuation of The Mandalorian, especially once Mando gets into it. But, Nick, you mentioned this. There's like 90 minutes where we don't see Boba at all, and it's just kind of the Mando show. What did you think about what we saw from Mando? Because, like, if you're a Mandalorian fan and you decided to skip this, you're going to be so freaking lost season 3.
Well, that's what I kind of mean when I say that, like, I like what they gave us, but I'm unclear on if they knew this is what they were doing, because I feel like they needed to explain that, right? Like, in some manner, they would have needed to explain it, because I can see a lot of people, especially, like, because Mando got people involved with Star Wars that were, like, fringe fans, like, right? Or even not even. Baby Yoda, and just developed its own fan base. And so I know people that watch Mando because they love Baby Yoda. And that's it. And they got into it. And they loved the story. And they were like, well, I'm not watching this Boba Fett show. Right? So, I mean, and then there's probably people the other way. But, see, the other way, if you're just watching Boba and you haven't watched Mando, you probably know about Baby Yoda and Mando. Like, they're not, like... If you're into Star Wars enough where you're watching the Boba Fett show, you have some knowledge level of Baby Yoda and Mando. You can't not. They're pop culture. But the other way, yeah, you're right. Like, people are going to be lost, right? Like you probably would have had to see this. So they're probably going to obviously do a last time on and show some kind of like recap.
There's so much.
It's weird they didn't set this up as, hey, look, everybody.
Can I hypothesize something?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is the universe.
Hold on a second.
Oh, go ahead.
No, Nick. Okay, sorry, Ron.
Oh, I was just gonna say, this is the universe. We're gonna put out a lot of different books, out based on this universe. Here you go. You may need to reference other books to get the whole story, and tell us that. Go ahead, Ron. Sorry.
Well, I think part of what we're seeing with Boba, Mando, and I'm assuming because we're going to have Sabine and Ahsoka, that we're building to the retaking or the rebuilding of Mandalore, and all of the different Mandalorian characters are going to have to come together for that. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing here, is that all these characters are going to have so many debts to each other and things like that, that even like Boba wouldn't care about rebuilding Mandalore, but he's going to owe the other characters these things. And I think that's the tied-in story we're seeing being built in all these, I'll just say, early New Republic era stuff.
So here's the thing, though, is that it's not just like a crossover. And I get that what you're saying about that, Nick. It's not just like a crossover. And to your point, like, when I was saying that I watch this with my family, my son, who is not as into Star Wars as he loves, this is weird, he loves Star Wars, he doesn't love the content. He loves Star Wars land, rides, T-shirts, logos, that kind of lore, but doesn't want to sit down on May the 4th and watch a Star Wars movie with me. It's really weird. But, he was really into Mandalorian. We watched the first Book of Boba Fett, he's like, eh. And so if you don't watch this, if you weren't involved with this, it's not like a crossover. You can miss Falcon and the Winter Soldier and still carry on with the Marvel Universe because
sure.
But this was you got Grogu back, you figured out what was going on there. The dark saber, they talked a ton about the dark saber and the little challenge that he had with the dark saber and when he finally found his people. And I mean, there's so much of the story that has continued here. And again, I clocked it. It was 90 minutes from the time that we saw Boba Fett till we saw him again. And when we did, it was like this. It was like, hey, Mando's here. Hey, any idea where we could get some foot soldiers? He's like, yeah, I'll be right back. And then we don't see Boba again for like another 20 minutes. But it was just so much to me about that I wasn't expecting. We got to see the Amy Sedaris character again. We got to see his new
I
ship.
love her.
His new ship being built. And that was, again, getting that put together was kind of awesome. By the way, Sean L2D2, $20 super chat. Good to see Nick and Ron. Great show,
What
everyone.
the heck?
I know.
What the heck?
Good to see
What
all
about
of
us,
you.
Rob?
Well, I mean, Desi, you and I do this a lot, so I get it. But
okay.
yeah, anyway, I
It
don't.
is good to see May and Ron.
It really is. Here, let's see a little bit more of Nick. Let's get a nice close look at Nick, and yeah. Any other thoughts on the Mando tie-in though?
Well,
I love the
I
wizard
think
reference.
it was
No,
was
Nick's
pure-
$20 buys some more Nick time here. So you quiet down, Desi.
Fine.
It was pure like Star Wars heaven. I mean, like those couple episodes. It's funny because like watching Book of Boba, I was enjoying it. All right, where's the story going? I was enjoying it. And there were moments where I was like, this is really amazing. These were really amazing moments. But like when Mando came back, and it was like, this is all Mando. It was like, ooh, oh, this is really beautiful. Like this is the Star Wars we've been loving, and it was a completely different feeling. And I was loving it. Now, I've since rewatched the that first episode where Mando came back a couple times. I think that was episode 5, I believe. And you know what? There's actually not that much depth to that episode. It was just kind of the Mando doing some stuff. There were some cool things in there, but then the next episode, episode 6, with Luke and Ahsoka, and Baby Yoda, and everything, like that melted my heart. Like that turned me into a puddle of goo, and I loved every moment of it.
R2D2, dude. R2D2. I was not expecting, like, we got to see Luke in in Mandalorian. We got to see Ahsoka in Mandalorian, but R2D2 just being there, like, like Mr. Rourke welcoming him to the island. It was fantastic. Kids, look it up.
Yeah.
But it was fantastic to be able to see R2D2, and then that whole bit
And
where they build him
he was the Uber driver.
where they build him a bench. That was so freaking
I love
funny.
those spider droids. Oh,
That was so good. Yeah, absolutely so good. Just talk
I
about.
was definitely
Go ahead,
worried
Ron.
with those though, with those appearances. Like, were we going to get another like Deus Ex Luke Machina like we did at the end of Mando, which I loved, but I didn't want to see like Luke come in and help against the Pikes, or after the X-Wing comes in and we see it's just R2 flying on autopilot. Was he going to come in and strafe things? Like, I'm just glad we didn't have to have those outside characters come in and save the day again. And I really was afraid at one moment we were going to see that.
Speaking of which, first of all, again, let me show this moment, because this is one of the ones I geeked out about. Because Boba's standing here. It's very Western, right? He's in the town. Everybody else has left. It's Cad Bane versus Boba in this lockdown. But the way he's holding his arms and his gun is just like throwback, pure old school Boba, and I was there for it. I'm like, oh, he's doing the thing, and I mean, it was just really so cool to see that. But this is a whole thing, is like, it's a Western. I mean, through and through, it feels like a Western from being on Tatooine, more so than anything I've seen so far in The Mandalorian. Do you agree with that, Desi? I mean, I know you're probably not a huge Western fan, but you mentioned the Spurs earlier, so I'm going to you.
I mean, when you see Cad Bane against Cobb Vanth, and he's got his deputy there, I mean, yeah, it's a straight up Western, with the cowboy hat and everything. So Cad Bane was the perfect choice to be the antagonist there, because, I mean, if they're going with the Western theme, who looks more like a Western space gangster than Cad Bane?
And in every time you see him, it's always he's just always looking up, like every single time.
So
It always
cool.
starts with the brim down and up. The first time he sees Boba
I need
Fett,
to
the
get
first
one
time.
of those hats so I could do that.
Yeah.
Every
So
Just Tonight episode, Tom tosses it to me. I'll do it.
I think you could use that old WDW&T bucket hat from one of the events, and you could do the same thing probably. But Ron, you were like, I'm glad no other characters came in for to save or whatever. Is that when he's about to lose to Cad Bane and he's laying on the ground, and it looks like he's about to bite it, which he's not going to do because it's Boba Fett. But you think, well, plus if he dies, they'll throw him in the back to tank and it'll be good as new. But he's about to kill him and telling him he's an old man and he's a has-been and he's washed up. By the way, Tamora is 60, looking good for 60.
Fennec
So
is
oh, she's
what, 58?
52. No, she's like 52, 53, I think. She's
Yeah.
but still, I mean, kicking butt in everything she does.
But
So
like, I was thinking about that. Is how old is Boba at this point? He should only be in his late 30s, really.
I mean, no,
He was
because the prequels were what,
19
20
years.
years?
19
Yeah.
years between them. 3 years prior to Clone Wars, and he was what, like 12?
So if he was 12 in the Clone Wars, and then I think there's still a passage of some time before Revenge
Right, it
of
was 3
the
years.
Sith. So let's say he was
15.
15,
So
and
34, maybe
then
he's 42, so maybe he's like my
35.
age then,
Yeah.
yeah.
But like, let's look at how what's his name? Obi-Wan aged. I mean, he looks terrible in those 19 years. I mean, Tatooine does something to a person. Wherever Fennec is hanging out, that's where I want to be. I want to bathe in those waters and make sure that that's what I'm looking like in my 50s.
yeah, and to Rosita's point though earlier about watching more Fennec, when Fennec comes to save the mods, that was cool. But when she single-handedly takes out everybody in that room at the end, that blew me
Yes!
away because at first I thought probably it's Boba and all the mods and they're all out there and like we flash forwarded to this moment where like they're just going to take out the head of the Pike Syndicate and the mayor and Cat, like everybody at once, not Cat, but he's not there, but everybody at once. And then when she drops down and then you see it was just her, like
Can we talk about the fact that Doc Ondar is the same species as the mayor? And I think it was like the day after Fennec kills the mayor, all of a sudden Doc Ondar isn't in his shop anymore.
oh, you mean
Conspiracy theory. They say he's off planet. I don't know, maybe his major domo says that it's a scheduled vacation actually. I'm just hoping that Fennec didn't get to Doc Ondar.
By the way, we saw through that a mile away, right? When he was like, "Hey, I'll go deliver a message," and he's like, "Okay," and he writes down the message, and the guy never looks at the message. We saw that, right? Like a mile away, that they was going to come out there and just it was all a distraction. So the thing I was talking about though, with like here's Boba and he's laying on the ground, and Cad Bane's got him dead to rights, and then when he just pulls out like the Tusken Raider gaffy stick move, like that was exactly, I didn't know that's what I wanted, but that was exactly what I wanted, was to him to be able to stand up to him and beat him on his own without Grogu coming and raising a little hand or without the Mandalorian coming in to join in. It was the two of them mano a mano, and he just it was awesome. Like, I love that. Also, I guess
I kept expecting Grogu to come in and do the magic hand thing, baby. But I thought that Grogu was coming to save the day and was going to like force shield everybody, and that's how they were going to get saved. But I liked how they did it this way instead.
There was a cheesy little moment.
I thought.
Go ahead, Nick.
I thought Grogu was going to save the Gamorrean guards from falling off the cliff. Like, I thought Baby Yoda was going to be down there at the bottom, like catching them.
From what we've seen of him, he's be turning them into bacon.
Well,
yeah, he might have wanted to eat them. You're right.
There was the moment, though, where he quiets the Rancor and then goes and curls up next to him.
Oh, my God.
Right?
Freaking cute.
The cutest moment in the history of anything that ever happened in this world. was when Baby Yoda
Adorable.
put the Rancor to sleep, curled up next to him, and then cuddled closer next to him and was like, sleep now.
Right. He's
Oh my
but he gave him like that little love pat. He's like, there, and then he's like, oh man, let me snuggle in here, buddy. Let me get all,
Oh my
oh, so freaking yeah. Right. That was
I need
yeah.
I don't know, a Funko Pop of that, a plush duo of that. I need
Plush
something.
duo.
I need something to
No,
commemorate that.
it was freaking amazing. The other moment we didn't talk about, which we were talking about in the Wigs Discord earlier, was the one where the one mod is they're trying to help the Wookiee and they get fired on, and the guy drops to his knees, does a spin for no reason, and shoots. And then I thought to myself, well, I got to talk about that on the show, and I thought maybe people wouldn't catch it, and there's already like all these memes about it, and like,
Oh yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was so... Ron, why did they do that?
I saw one thing. It's like if you look, there's a blaster bolt that goes over his shoulder as he spins, so he is supposedly actually ducking out of something. But it's also a very Robert Rodriguez kind of move. Like, it's something he would put in one of his movies. On top of that, but you definitely do see a blaster bolt just miss him as he's doing that.
Yeah, it was pretty bad, and like again, it was one of those things where I was like, ugh. So one final thing that I wanted to say about this is that this series, again, I feel like to use it a third time, is a love letter to Star Wars fans in general, where it brings in, Desi, you said it's more than just the prequel. Or the original. It's the prequels. It's the Clone Wars. It's everything has been represented here, and it was almost again like you were talking about with Jedi, like, or I don't remember which one you were talking about, Nick, but with the one where they're like, they're. I forget which one of you said it. They were checking off a list of everything. I think it was Desi on Twitter and saying this is what it should be. I think this is everything I wanted it to be, and things I didn't even know that I wanted to be, like the King Kong moment with the Rancor on the on the thing. That was like it's a little cheesy, but yeah, I'll take it. But
Madam Lipskin brought this up in the chat when Boba says, "Do it." And then the Rancor rips apart the
robot.
Oh my God! It was such a Palpatine, Anakin.
Do it. Yeah.
Yes.
But
Oh
this
my
is what
gosh.
people say that Batuu and Galaxy's Edge is not. It's like it's the view of what Star Wars could be, and the fact that just like Marvel, Avengers Campus is, they can bring things in as like Mandalorian is a hit. They put that his helmet in Doc Ondar's, or things like that they can tie in. But it didn't already have all of this lore and legacy, because it just looked like a generic. Again, these are somebody else's words. I like Star Wars Land, but it looked more like a generic situation for Star Wars rather than this, which is such a love letter to Star Wars fans. So I just thought that was worth mentioning. But we're like way over. So anything else before we do like the final thought on this? Anything? I mean, we didn't get too granular in this, but there were enough spoilers, I think.
I would like to see Boba Tea in the parts. Please make that happen.
Boba Tea. I'm not gonna lie. When people just say Boba, that's the first thing I think of. You have to say Boba Fett, or else I think of the little boba balls on the Night Blossom in Pandora. But again,
Those aren't true Boba.
no, not at all. So now that we've talked about this, we talked about the lore, we talked about everything leading up to this. It's 7 episodes that really kind of felt like a movie. Now's the big question. We're going around the horn. We're going to start with Desi on this one and end with Nick, because gosh darn it, you got you and Ron got the $20 tonight, so I just want to make sure we build up to you guys. So Desi, would you recommend this show?
This show is Wizard. And yes, I recommend it. I love it. I don't care what other people say about it starting off slow. I didn't think it started off slow. I was on the edge of my seat from the first episode, and I loved it.
When you say other people, you mean me. Thanks. Appreciate it. Ron.
I would definitely recommend it. I think it did have that kind of slow burn at the beginning, and it was deliberate, and it was building up to something. I think they could have spaced things out a little better to get that flow going, but I think it was that very deliberate style that they're trying to emulate, particularly here.
Okay. And let's see, there was one other person we were going to talk to. I think Nick, that's the one. Nick, would you recommend this?
Well, I'm going to say something that may be obvious, but I think I have to say it. Like, yes, with a qualifier, I don't think this is an interesting entry into Star Wars, right? So I want to put that out there and say, obviously, I think you would have had to watch Empire and Return of the Jedi to appreciate this. And that may be insanely obvious, but, like, there are people who got into Star Wars through Mando, through the sequel trilogy. I think to get the most out of this, you need to have seen Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and I will say that you probably want to watch Mando before watching this. So if there's anyone listening that hasn't watched any of that, watch all that and then watch Book of Boba, and it'll be that much more fulfilling.
Yeah, and I would say I agree with that. I think you could probably enter with Mandalorian. Like you said, a lot of people entered with Mandalorian and came to it because of Grogu. And I think you get enough from Mandalorian that if you wanted to, you wouldn't necessarily miss out on all the stuff. The problem is that a moment like Cad Bane showing up won't be the same like moment for you that it was for anybody who watched Clone Wars or anybody who has been waiting to see this character come to life. I've waited all of my life to, this sounds over dramatic, but to see live action Star Wars shows and to see them being treated so well makes me happy. And I can't wait to see what happens when they go back to Obi-Wan, like when it's not this world necessarily, and when they go to do Obi-Wan. I like that all this stuff is interconnected, but I can't wait to see what happens when it's something that doesn't necessarily have to be connected to this, but can still be connected to Star Wars. So for me, I would definitely recommend this, but to your point, Nick, I think this is season 3 of Mandalorian. You don't come into this just blindly and start watching it. You really, even if you know the source material from the original trilogy, you can't really know all of what's necessarily happening with Mando, and the return to the prequel with the Naboo ship doesn't mean as much to you if you haven't seen the prequels. But I still think if you watch Mando, it's enough that it's kind of cool and they kind of explain it. So, thank you guys for being on the panel tonight. I know we went almost 90 minutes on this one, which is about, again, as long as it took for us to get back to Boba. So I think that's why we did it this way. If you have other comments that you want to share with us, please share them in the comments below. We would love to get that feedback from you. Next week, as part of Black History Month, we're going to be doing Princess and the Frog. It's an amazing movie, hand-drawn. Our good friend Eric Wolf is going to come talk about it, and it was just, I think it's one of my favorites. I've kind of held off for a while to talk about it, so can't wait to talk about that one next week. But thank you guys so much for being on the show. Thanks, Nick. Dude, we appreciate you being here. Ron, it's awesome. Desi, whatever. But thank you guys, and we will see you guys next Tuesday. Have a great week. Be safe out there. Take care.
Right.